R4. So I love this thing. It's so comfortable and it's soft material and it's not super heavy, but it's heavy enough that it gives you good protection. So plus, sporting the brand. So good morning. So let's jump in and get started. Today we're going to be talking about the 5 stages of working with a buyer. This is actually a 3-part class. I broke it up into different sections just to, make it so it's only an hour on Zoom. We'll get a little exhausted being on Zoom. And so just really deep dive into the content of what does this look like to work with the buyer. And if you've coached with me or had a conversation with me, gone to any classes, you hear me rant about the process of working with the buyer. I will tell you that in 25 years of doing this, the 2 times I didn't do a buyer consultation, it was a train wreck, right? And the deal's never closed. And so I'm a really big stickler in the fact that we have to invest that time on the upfront with someone so that they see the value. People turn on the TV and Monica, you were on a reality TV show, so you can chime in as an expert on this, that those things are BS, right? They only show what gets ratings. And so, but the consumer doesn't know that, right? They watch that and they think, oh, I can go look at 3 houses and get an offer 50 grand under asking. It's not reality, right? And so there's a lot of things that when we take the time to invest that hour and a half in the upfront, they understand the process, right? This isn't just about going out looking at homes. That's a part of it, but there's a lot of other scary things that can happen, and that's why they need representation. And so my consultation, we're going to walk through everything over the next 3 weeks of what could be included in the consultation, but really mine's very stripped down. I take the purchase contract, all of the addendums, especially the agency, the market advisory, the buyer advisory, right? And I go through those things. I explain them. I get them signed, right? Not the purchase contract, obviously, but if I get my agency signed, that's an important thing, you guys, that we talk about. What are the fiduciary duties that we owe a buyer? And I think we all just gloss over it and go, yeah, here's a form to sign. But if you take the time to really understand what the fiduciary duties are, that changes the game with that relationship you have with the buyer. Plus, your competition isn't doing it, right? And so take the time to do that and go through the contract. It's one thing to be a Pop-Tart realtor. I've been a Pop-Tart, right? I've done it. I've made money from it, but I think you have to trust your gut, and that's a skill you have to develop. That, am I asking the right questions on the upfront? So this person isn't someone who's going to chop me up and put me in their trunk, right? That's one factor of being a Pop-Tart, but asking the right questions, right? So then now you meet the person, you solidify the relationship. Now it's time to step into that consultant role and have the consultation, okay? We cannot gain buyer loyalty without doing it, right? We have to have that time. So today we're going to dive into what are the 5 stages of that. And then next week we'll talk about the roles and expectations. And I forget what the 3rd class is, but we'll get there. So y'all have the materials. It's the materials for all 3 classes. So I'll reference the pages we're going to talk about today. And then let's dive in. Let me get my PowerPoint where I want it. Okay, so starting on page 3, let me just make sure that isn't someone. What we're going to talk about today is we want to teach you an intentional and proactive approach for helping find buyers and then working with those buyers, gaining that commitment and that loyalty. Last couple of years, we've really focused on just getting listings, right? And we haven't really marketed to buyers because, let's be honest, did any of us really want to work buyers the last couple of years? It was hard, right? So we wanted to go where the money was, and that was in the listings. And now, I don't know how many of you were on Tina Tamaru's webinar last week from Cromford Reports, and she spent a good deal of time talking about FHA. And I think all of us are missing the boat that we are not talking about the MIP savings enough. We should be shouting that from the rooftops to every person in our database. And FHA 3 years ago, even a year ago, you weren't getting FHA deals accepted, right? And now tides have turned. Sellers are willing to pay closing costs. So, and FHA, it's cheaper interest rate, right? It's a cheaper interest rate. So the buyer is not only saving on rates versus conventional, less down payment. Unless they want to put more down, they certainly can. And then sellers are willing to pay closing costs. The example we pushed out to you guys, and I think only Nate and I shared it on social media. I get it if you don't want to share a Motto Mortgage thing, but go get your own lender then to push out some content for you. On a $450,000 home loan, on a loan, it was $112 a month savings is what that MIP changes. That's freaking huge. And we are not talking about that enough as an industry. Okay. We need to be shouting that from the rooftops. All the new home construction along the 303 corridor out there, fantastic deals, you guys. I mean, and Lennar's offering bonus on commission, which last year they weren't offering anything. And so I would be out there, just getting that information and putting it in front of as many people as you possibly can. Push it out through KB Core, put it on your social media. We should be talking about that, right? Do an interview with your lender about the benefits of FHA, right? So we need to be talking about that a lot more. So marketing to buyers, right? We stopped marketing to them because we didn't want to, right? And so here we are, we've got inventory. Let's go out and find some buyers. And interest rates. Interest rates are not as, I think interest rates are a bigger deal for us than they are for the consumer. I just got a new coaching client and they're in the Pennsylvania area, low inventory. They're seeing multiple offers, even with interest rates where they are, right? So when a buyer wants to buy, they're going to buy, right? We know that the River Real Estate tells us that 13% of the population is still going to move, right? So we need to make sure that we're the one that finds them, right? They find us, okay? So we want you to be confident to work with buyers. And then the results, I'm going to show you a slide on how that can result in 9 to 64 closed transactions. Open houses. I've been doing this 25 years. What am I doing on Saturday? Sit in an open house, right? Got skunked on the first one I did up here because of the wind. So I went and bought some sandbags. So I will not get skunked by the wind again. My sons are going to be hunkered down with some sandbags. So open houses, right? We know that is a fantastic way to meet new people. And good job, Monica and Orlando, on their video they did last weekend for their open house. You guys were cute. So pushing that content out, right? Knowing, am I doing an effective open house? Obviously our network or your sphere of influence, you guys hear me talk about the concept of top 50, and then farming, which we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about a farm today. It's a little bit more advanced in a different class that we'll talk about that. Obviously having repeat and referral business, that's the sweet spot of this business, right? When you do it long enough to get those repeat and referrals coming in. And then obviously working getting new clients. Today, we're just focusing in on buyers. And then our client care system, I would highly encourage all of you take a peek at KV Core. That is a really robust, almost a little bit too much CRM that we now have as a free tool to us as RE/MAX agents. So I've been playing around with it. A lot of really cool features in there. I think Alex is doing a class tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. I don't know that they sent it out yet, but they are going to, well, I'm not going to say anything. They were talking about changing the format of having it be a beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So, but I haven't seen anything come out on that yet. So consistent. So when we look at the slide here, so being an effective converter. So it's one thing, Monica, to generate the leads, right? And be a good lead generator. But now do I know what to say once I get the lead to gain the confidence or gain their commitment, right? And so we talk about converting. That's where our scripts and dialogues come in. All right. And I know none of us really like practicing scripts and dialogues, but if you think about a really great movie, by the way, little side note, go see Champions with Woody Harrelson. It was a fantastic movie, really gets you in the feels, laugh, cry, all those good emotions. So it's a fantastic movie. So thinking about a movie, right? And I think about this particular movie, they had to practice those lines, right? They had to practice it, and they had to practice it in a way that it would land, right? And that you would have those emotions in watching the movie. And so the same thing here when we're talking to people, if you don't have scripts and dialogues, it's really hard to overcome objections, right? And so, don't be afraid of that. So here we have 45 weeks of the year that we would work. Okay. So if we set one buyer consultation a week, that's 45 appointments. If only half of those showed up, which I think is a pretty conservative number, that would be 23 additional meetings. And if only 50% of those people actually qualify to buy a home, that's 12 clients, 12 people additional. And if only 75% of those people buy, which again, I think is very conservative, that's an additional 9 closings. And if we just do quick math and an average $10,000 commission, that's a decent day, right? Just by having a plan to work buyers, right? So that's, again, we do the math on that's pretty good day. Okay. And of course you want to run your numbers based on your own statistics of what your average commissions are. So, and what this doesn't take into consideration too, is what other stuff comes from that. right? If you sell a home to a buyer, now you host a buyer or a housewarming party for them, you get some more leads from that, right? You go door knock and introduce them to the neighbors when they move in, you get some leads from that. I think Monique, I think that happened to you, didn't it? When you first got into the business, you door knocked and ended up getting a lead from that. So there's other things that come from having 9 transactions that are not included in that slide. Okay. All right. So the no do have, we got to be able to convert. So that comes back to our scripts and dialogues. And then we're working with buyers. Really, you guys, everything that we do is all about the relationships. We heard Nick Bailey talk about that from R4, that you don't need leads, you need consumers who are ready, right? We need consumers who are ready. And so we think about the relationships we have. Sorry, just making a note here that Jennifer jumped in. Jennifer, I'll get you the class materials when we're done. Thinking about the relationships that we have. To me, I'd much rather work with the people that know me, like me, trust me, than go out and try to, get Zillow leads or wherever leads, right? So we're really talking about having that relationship. So in the class materials, you'll have several different dialogues or scripts. So you have the meeting, you have the showing, you have the closing, justification, and then how do we deal with lowball buyers? So those are all scripts that are in the materials. And what we need to have is we need a criteria sheet. We need to be able to give something to a buyer, especially if there's more than one person involved, and helping them identify what it is that they need in their home. You have that in the class materials. I would take that and customize it and brand it, make it pretty for you. There's a couple things when we get to that I think we could add to it, but having a criteria sheet, what if at an open house, you had this criteria sheet and you gave it to a potential person coming through? Would that be helpful? Yeah, could be. My boyfriend and I argued about closet space, right? He doesn't think closet space is important. And I said to him, I go ask all your girlfriends at work. Came back, all of them said closet space was important, right? And so when there's 2 people making a decision, there's oftentimes a different opinion of what's important. So you hand them a criteria sheet, now you follow up, right? That's a helpful tool that your competition isn't doing. Okay. Next class, we're going to talk about the roles and expectations, which I think are fantastic. And then we've got some scripts and dialogues on dealing with buyer representation agreements. And then we need a contract, right? We need even if it's an example contract, and then any addendums. Okay. So again, buyer advisory, agency, all those things. And then any letterhead or note cards, business cards, that type of stuff. In the back of the materials, you have some examples of note cards that you can use for either working together or not working together. All right, so in any momentum class, my favorite parts are the core values. And so core beliefs. So just take a quick second and read through those. If you've taken any momentum classes, you've probably seen these already. So no new thing there for you. Okay, so a couple of my favorites are, number one, something I say on a regular basis, is that I live in a world of abundance. This is just a great feel-good affirmation that applies to all parts of our life, right? And if you sit enough open houses, you're going to have one when no one shows up. And so if you have an attitude that I live in a world of abundance, we'll say next, right? That we move on to the next. Number 4, I think, is important when we're working with buyers. So duplicated processes and systems will lead to successful results. If you were to ever get a job at McDonald's, they have something called McDonald's University. And so all employees have to go through McDonald's University, and they're taught that if you take a large cup and you put the right amount of ice in there and you put it underneath the button that says large, that cup will fill up to the precise amount, not under, not over. And if you know anything about restaurants, overage and waste is where we lose money. And so people know when they go through McDonald's University that this is how you fill up the cup, right? And so when we think about working with the buyer, it's the same thing. We have duplicated processes that we do over and over again, like a consultation, that then reduces the risk that comes with a buyer. Years ago, when most of you know who Frank is, years ago when Frank was a baby agent, he got this new lead and he spent 5 days with them. He was so excited, thinking he was going to sell a house. And on the 5th day, the wife turned to the husband and said, "Do you think that we should tell Frank that we filed bankruptcy last week?" Why is that important? Well, you wouldn't have spent 5 days with them if you knew that they couldn't buy for at least 2 years. If he had had a process and had gone through the same thing like McDonald's University, asked questions, used a criteria sheet, dug in deeper, he would have known that on day 1, not day 5. Okay. I had a similar situation happen to me not long ago. I had a referral come in. It was a buyer. Guy was a firefighter, had his own lender, you know, he was a savvy guy, wasn't his first rodeo, right? And so I spent some time with them, show them houses, end up out in Blackstone, new construction. And I'm on my way to go meet them to write the contract for the new construction. And the sales guy calls me and he goes, your buyers aren't doing anything. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, they had a short sale. And they, you all remember with short sales, right? Actually, it was a foreclosure. They had a foreclosure, tried to do a short sale, but it went to foreclosure. And, you know, there's a window of time you have to wait, right? With a foreclosure. And they got mad at me for not telling them that, but I didn't ask the question, right? And so at the time I should have dug in deeper. I knew that they had sold a house. You know, there were things that I knew that I didn't puzzle together, and I had to laugh at myself because I'm like, well, shit, I'm kind of a veteran in this industry and this just happened to me, right? So we got to ask the right questions, right? So digging in deeper, and so things like that happen, but having a duplicated process, asking the right questions, right? I had a consultation with them and that was just not a question that I asked. Okay. So number 5, I think, should be tattooed somewhere you can see it every single day. It's unacceptable for your business to earn 0 or write in your own goal, what that goal is for you, and look at it often. Number 7, I will not convert 100% of the leads I do not generate. You guys have heard me say this before, is don't get out of bed every day and wonder who needs your services. So we want to fill our pipeline. We meet someone, we get disappointed that they're 6 months out or a year out. That's okay, Francine, because I need to lead in a year or 6 months, right? And that's my pipeline that I'm feeling. And so all of you guys should be getting an email from KB Core every day with a list of 10 people that you could call. And I get it. Some of them might be realtors. Some of them might be vendors. Call them anyway. Call them anyway, right? You never know if there's a realtor in your database that all of a sudden now you're getting a referral because they got a lead that's coming your way. Right? Call them anyway. It's 10 people, 10 conversations, right? Even if you called half of those people, I promise you're going to see a difference in your business. Number 13, they won't meet me. They're not a buyer. I agree with this, but I think there's also caveats. So you get a sign call or a lead that comes in, you go show the property. Again, I'm not schlepping to Buckeye at 5 o'clock on a Friday to go show one house. However, if it's my listing, I'm going to go show it. If it makes sense, I'm going to go show it. And then I want to close for the appointment. I've made money doing this. And so I'm not going to sit here and say, don't do it. You need to ask the right questions and make sure your intuition is telling you it's okay to go do that. Right. And then now we got to close for the appointment. And then A buyers, right? What are A buyers? They're ready to go, right? They have a need. They need to buy in the next 30 days. They're qualified and they're loyal to you. Okay. And the only way we make A buyers is by what? Having a consultation, right? Knowing where they are. If they say that they're not in a hurry, that's a big lie. Because if you're living with your mother-in-law, with your dogs and your kids, you're in a hurry, right? One of the biggest lies people say in this industry is I'm not in a hurry. So we have a whole class that dives into activities management. I'm going to hit on a few of these things today just because I think they're important, but we do have a whole deep dive on the vital activities. So there are 7 buyer activities. And so we think about what is the one commodity that we have in life that's limited? And it's time. All right. If you've ever had someone close to you pass away, my father-in-law passed away. It's been 5 years now. One thing he said on his deathbed, and this guy lived a really full life. Like he jumped out of planes and blew up stuff. Like he was sold houses. It was a very, very well-rounded guy. And the thing he said was that he wished he had more time. And so when our time is up, our time is up. And so I would challenge you that when you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. Right. And there's a book called Girl Wash Your Face. And the author, her name is Rachel Hollister, I think. She says in the book that her life changed when she stopped breaking promises to herself. How many of us do that? Right. Especially if you're a parent. You are the last on the rung, right? This is about everybody else in your life. So time is our only limited commodity. And so when we say yes to something, we're saying no to something else. So the 7 vital responsibilities: lead gen and lead conversion. These are number 1 and 2 for a reason. right? It's the most important thing that we do in this business is go out and find leads and then convert them. And we see this often in a buyer's or in an agent's pipeline as they get busy, right? And then they prospect, get a bunch of leads. They stop prospecting because now they're working on taking care of the deal and holding it together. They get down here, crap them out of leads, then we go back to work. So we see these peaks and valleys throughout the year. If you take a vacation, forget about it. I've seen agents take a vacation, don't come back to work for 3 months. And so that's why we have the gas program, right? Is we want you guys to have that consistent accountability every single week, right? And so that's the most important thing. And yet it is the thing that we resist and we blow off the fastest. Makes no sense. It should be the thing that we commit to no matter what, right? It should be the thing that's that the house could be on fire and I'm still going to get my lead gen going, right? And so stop breaking promises to your prospecting time, right? Because it's the easiest thing, yet it's the hardest thing, and it really shouldn't be. Okay. The people in your database, they want to hear from you, right? They want to hear from you. And we don't even have to call to sell, right? Just boredom. Just family, occupation, recreation, dreams. Next thing is the admin prep, which 75% of what we do in a transaction is not money-making activity. That's why it's important. Stephanie's on here. She can give herself a plug for TC work. That's why it's important to have the TC. I will admit, I don't, if I had to put a form in SkySlope, I don't know how to, and I'm totally okay admitting that because it's not the highest and best use of my time. Okay. I have a TC for that. And she does a way better job than I do. So then she catches mistakes. So then the next thing, the fun part is showing homes. And then my favorite part is writing and negotiating, right? Going in for the kill and putting the deal together. And then your closing preparation. So making sure the deal stays together. And then post-closing activities. I like to show up on moving day if I can. Because the one thing people forget to do on moving day is drink lots of water and eat. And so if I can show up with food and drinks, I am a welcome sight, right? And so you can do that for buyers and sellers. And then another thing is to follow up 5 to 7 days after they're in the home. Inevitably something happens. There's a leak or something breaks. They don't know where their warranty is. They might have forgotten that they even got a home warranty. And so now you can be the ones to call the warranty company and say, hey, let's get this going. I had a buyer one time, they moved to Arizona from like Ohio in July. And the first week in the house, the air conditioning broke. And so I got to be the hero and initiate the warranty to get that taken care of. The warranty company even put them up in a hotel because it was so bloody hot. And so make sure you're doing that follow-up. Then I think, 30 days in, follow up again, right? And then I've talked about hosting a client or a housewarming party for them. You guys, we used to do this and it was wildly successful. And I think Nate talked about this not too long ago, but we don't want to talk real estate while you're there, right? Just be there to be of service. And don't pay for the alcohol. You could certainly, pay for some food or something like that. If you really want to be of service, go be the person who cooks the food, right? Show up and work their grill and be the guy who cooks the food. It's a really great way to meet new people. Back in the day, before the internet, we would actually get physical addresses and do paper invitations. And now those people went into our database and now we absorbed them and they started getting dripped on our database, right? Nowadays, we'd probably just use Facebook, but still can friend them, right? And connect with them on social media because that's where people are today. You still add them to your database, right? It's a different type of database. So page 8, so lead gen. So this is where we're talking about finding new buyers, right? So we've talked about open houses. We've talked about your sphere, the internet, right? Marketplace, Craigslist, social media. Last week we had the social media class and I think a couple of you were in it. And, Jan Stevens reminded me that last year, when I ran that class, I challenged everyone to do a 30-day every day post something on social media. And, she was cute because she said it was hard, but then, she saw the benefits of doing that. So I'm putting that challenge out again. Y'all go, try to commit to putting something out every day. And then of course we could talk about postcards. You guys also have VoicePad, which is a tool that Nate pays for. So VoicePad's great for if you're sitting in an open house, get the list of, if anybody's called off that property, get that list and call and invite those people. You take a new listing, you had one similar, call those people. Say, hey, you called about 123 Elm Street. That one's no longer available, but we just listed a new one. Are you still in the market? Right. So I had a situation, of course, this was years ago before VoicePad. We used to advertise in the Northwest Valley Prospector. Monica, you probably remember this paper. I don't know that it's even still around, but it hit every door in Glendale and Peoria. So if we had the back page full color, we would fight, right, to be on call on Fridays, because that's when this thing dropped. And we would have what we call groupies that would call for listings. And this couple, Jim and Carrie, had called about a property we had listed for sale. And, I was doing an open house. So I called them up, said, hey, I'm setting the property open. They came to the open house. We sold their house in Peoria. I sold them a new construction in Sierra Verde. We upsized from that one to another one. So now that's 3 transactions, three sales, but that was a buy and a sell. And then they sold again, moved back east, and I referred them to somebody, all from one phone call from one open house. It was a sign call. So it works, right? So use VoicePad to your advantage. A lot of other cool stuff you can do with VoicePad. I'm not going to geek out about it now, but there's a lot of other cool things that VoicePad can do. Lead generation. So again, page 8, I'm not going to go through all of these. We'll dive in more about getting on the selling channel, having the conversation, building rapport. We're going to talk about that next week when we cover the roles and expectations. One of the things in momentum is we don't talk about how much are you pre-qualified for. That's actually considered offensive these days. And so, we used to always say, will you be paid cash, Scott, or do you need to get a loan? And now that's come back into popularity. We used to do it just to be an icebreaker. Now it's the appropriate way to do it. In momentum, we talk about their financial ability. That sounds really good, doesn't it? That sounds like my financial ability. Wow, right? It sounds better than how much you're pre-qualified for. And so words matter, how we say things matter. And to me, when you say, I'd like to check your financial ability, or your financial comfort zone is another way it's said in momentum, that builds trust right away. Instead of me just going in and saying how much you pre-qualified for, it builds trust. It's a better way to say it. It sounds more professional. Okay. All right. Next section here, admin prep. So a thank you note. Thank you notes. We just talked about this the other day in something I was in about the power of a thank you note. I keep them. Right. I keep them. I got my anniversary note card on my desk right here from my honey. And I have a whole drawer, a folder in my filing cabinet dedicated to notes that I've gotten over the years. And every once in a while I'll read through them, and they make you feel good. Right. And so much of the crap we get in the mail is crap. Right? Like nothing good. And so you go to the mailbox and you get a handwritten note, you feel good. You're going to hang on to it. Right. So sending a thank you note, powerful stuff. Right. So admin, again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Showing is the next section. So once you have, you've got your criteria sheet, you have the appointment set, get them back into the office, go through the packages you're going to show them. Be careful too, to not be lazy. And what do I mean by that? MLS has made us lazy. When I first started selling real estate, our MLS was a big giant binder that sat at the front desk, and every morning, it was only par, would fax in the MLS sheets on that rolly paper that if it sat in the sun too long, it turned black, right? And it smelled funny. And my job was to update the MLS book. And so started with in alphabetical order, right? Streets first and then alphabetical. So Scott, you physically had to go to the office and thumb through this book to find properties for your clients, right? We didn't have the fancy MLS. So what I mean by agents are lazy, we set up a portal, we let the MLS auto search it, we let the client pick which houses they want to see, and then we assume we're done. I know some of you have already heard me tell the story. My sister-in-law rented a house for 5 years, and I had sent this property to her multiple times, but the photos sucked. And again, I want to stress the fact that there was a rental. It wasn't even a house she was going to buy. And finally, I was like 5 times it popped up in the MLS search. I said, you need to go see this house. They ended up living there for 5 years, but the photos sucked, and she kept rejecting it because the photos sucked. So we can't be lazy. You need to be paying attention to what they're saying, right? Read between the lines, and then search the MLS, look at the photos, go preview if you need to, right? To see if you got a real particular buyer. I just went and previewed this weekend. I don't have a buyer. I just went to preview, right? To know what's going on in the neighborhood I'm farming. So, pay attention to that. If the photos suck, if you're out previewing and you know the inventory, you can get past photos not being good. Right. So you have to go out and do that. And then, so pick one, listen to what they have to say, right? And let them pick. But I think you need to be involved in that process as well. I will tell you that usually when I throw in what I call a ringer, right, something that maybe isn't exactly what they say they want, it's usually the one they end up buying. Because if we're listening and reading between the lines and we're previewing, we know the inventory, then it makes it easier for us. We had a lady a long, long time ago, we called them Patrick Swayze and Elvira, because that's what they look like. And they wanted a house in Arrowhead Lakes, had to be on the lake, Monica. That was it, right? Had to be on the lake. And Nate was tired of working them, so I took her out one day and I'm listening to what she said. Her real name was Kathy. And I'm like, Kathy, we have this listing. It's in Arrowhead Lakes. If you stand on the deck and you look across the tree line, you can see the lake. However, everything you're telling me fits your criteria. Will you just go look at this house? Just humor me and look at it. That was the house they bought, right? Because everything that was in this house, it was a custom home. They had similar styles and tastes, and their children were really important to them. And so her need to take care of her children and buy a home that was good for her children was more important than her need to be on the lake, right? So if I hadn't listened and pressed the issue, she wouldn't have bought that house, and we would have continued showing her homes that didn't fit her criteria, but they were on the lake, right? So pay attention to that. Next thing is writing the offers. And so you guys, when you go, you're going to write an offer, call the listing agent beforehand, ask if there's anything they need, right? Because if they're getting inundated, especially in the crazy multiple offers, ask if there's anything that they need, ask any question that you need to before you write the offer. And then once you send it, make sure you confirm that it was received. Because that way we know that they actually got the offer. Most of us don't do this, but part of your fiduciary duties is to ensure that that offer was presented. And how many of you feel like maybe in the last 3 years you wrote an offer that didn't actually get presented? I do, totally do, right? And so you can request to present that offer yourself to the seller. Seller doesn't have to oblige, but the only way you will know if your offer was presented is if you present it yourself. And I will tell you, I won in a situation where I presented the offer, right? Went to the seller's home and presented the offer. We can't do love letters anymore. So is that a way to get around that, right? So you can show up, Jennifer, and present that offer in the best light to that seller to represent your client. All right. So negotiating the offers, that's my favorite part. Going through and stay involved. If something starts to go sideways, don't be that agent that disappears. That's the worst, right? It's horrible when a lender does it. It's terrible when one of the agents does it. So even if it's bad news, right, stay engaged. I just closed a deal that was a real hairy one at the end, and I was so appreciative of the buyer's agent and just their attitude, and the buyer. She was amazing. And so I actually sent them a box of crumble cookies just to say thank you, because they were so amazing, right? So stay engaged, and even if it's bad news, got to work together, right? Our job is to keep that contract together. Then lastly, closing preparation, or I guess not lastly, closing and post-closing. So reviewing stuff, right? If you don't understand the closing statement, go ask Jody to sit down and walk you through it. She'll explain everything to you. We can't stick our head in the sand and just not know. If you've negotiated closing costs, you need to make sure those things are checked off. I one time had a title company try to charge us a rush HOA fee because they had dropped the ball in ordering the HOA. If I hadn't reviewed it, my sweet clients would have never known the difference, right? So we got to question those things. Reviewing that, also reviewing your title policy, right? I think we get lazy in this too, that we just assume that our favorite title person is going to tell us if there's something on there, and hopefully they do, but it's still your responsibility to read through that stuff. Okay. And then attending the closing. I will tell you, I've not always done this. I've had a lot of agents come through this class though and tell me that that's a really, really important part of what they do, that it's kind of their last opportunity to solidify that bond with the client. And of course you got the photo opportunities and all that fun stuff for social media. And I've since kind of changed my tune on this, and I do agree. And just thinking about, if you've ever had a time when you needed a lawyer to represent you, there's something very comforting in knowing you can tell that person anything and they have to keep it to themselves, right? So kind of the same thing here when we go. You might sit there and just look pretty because the title company is doing their thing, but I think there's a lot of comfort that it offers, especially if it's a first-time home buyer. Post-closing, ask for that review, right? Get in there and ask for it. Facebook's great, but Google is where you should be getting your reviews. So if you haven't set up a Google My Business account, maybe reach out to Alex and he can help walk you through that. But that's where it's at, right? Is using Google Your Business for reviews. And don't be afraid of bad reviews. You can't improve, and you can't improve your process, and you can't secure that relationship for future transactions if you know that they're unhappy, if you don't know that they're unhappy about something. Okay. So don't be afraid to solicit that, and then handle it, right? Don't be defensive, handle it appropriately. Okay. And then door knocking, right? Could you door knock? We have a closing, door knock the 10, 10, 20, right? So 10 on either side, 20 across the street. Hey, great time to meet your new neighbor, right? I've yet to speak to the neighbor across the street. We've talked to this neighbor once. We've talked to this neighbor a couple times, right? So most of us come home, open the garage, pull in, shut the garage. And so if you were to knock, right, and say, hey, Jennifer, this is your new neighbor, right? So then, of course, follow up. I've already talked about doing the 7-day and then the 30-day and staying in contact with them. If you get invited to something in their life, please go. It's important. We've just helped them with a primal need of shelter. And if you think about your own life, like what happens in your home, right? You have, you laugh, you cry, you make memories, you lose pets, you raise babies. Like there's so much that happens inside of a home. And that's why this job is so important, right? Because we get to help people with that. And you've just helped them cross that threshold. Got to stay engaged, right? We are not just their realtor. We've become a part of their family, and we've helped them with something so important. And so have to stay engaged. You have to stay in contact. So if you get invited, I don't care what it is, go. Right. And if you can't physically go, make sure you send something to acknowledge the invitation. Okay. I've been to weddings, I've been to baby showers, I've been to funerals. So all of those things that encompass life, we need to be there. Okay. And that's not about getting business. It's just about doing the right thing and staying in contact with someone that you were important to now. Okay. Nate shared a story. There was somebody posted about a funeral and he commented on it, didn't have any plans to go to the funeral, but she said, we can't wait to see you. And he went, and I think there's 4 transactions that are all possibly going to come to be because he went to this funeral. So, and something he hadn't planned on going to, but moved his schedule to go. So key indicators of success on page 11. Bragging rights, right? What are the things that you can brag about that people want to know in a good way? Bragging, right? So what's your percentage of car rides versus people who actually get to buy their perfect home? So how good are you, right, at finding that perfect home, and then how many times do we have to take them out? What's the list price to sales price ratio? So this says, what's your negotiation skills? Are you able to negotiate and save the buyer money? Average homes that you viewed or previewed, your average ranking as far as your 5 stars on Google, and then any client testimonials. The other thing I think that's not on here that we could brag about is how many home warranties did we negotiate? What's our percentage of concessions that we've negotiated, right? And so those are all things that are bragging rights that demonstrate your skill. So not bragging in a bad way, but demonstrate your skill, and then say to me why I want to work with you. All right. And so tracking that stuff, right? We've got a tracker in the momentum materials of how to track that stuff as well. So page 11, make sure. Yeah. Okay. So page 11 in the top part there. So the relationship-based selling, we're talking about this being a team. Okay. So, and I love the script at the top, the mission. I want to ensure that the buyers who work with me get the home they want and want the home they get. I'm a year in this house I bought. It's not my dream home. Right? It's okay, but it's not my dream home. And so how many people in the last 3 to 5 years bought a home because they just had to buy a home and it's not their dream home? I think there's a lot, right? What was there? There was a percentage out there that was floating around. I forget what it was. If anybody remembers the percentage of people that don't like the house they're living in, that they bought in the last couple of years. And so when we talk about having that script, right, I want to ensure you get the home you want and want the home you get. So we want to have the meeting, right? So confirm where they are in the process. So have the buyer consultation. That now we talk to their lender, right? We identify what's their financial comfort zone. We do the research, right? Now we get into the MLS. We look at new homes. We look at for sale by owners, and then the off-market properties, and then we do the showings, right? And then we have the offer. We help them make an informed, intelligent decision. Then we go in, we negotiate for repairs if there are repairs that need to be negotiated. And then obviously the last part is helping them realize the aspiration of being a homeowner. So the 5 stages that are included here are, first is the pre-conversation. So getting as much information as you can before you meet with them, right? Fact finding. We set the office appointment, right? And by the way, if you call the offices, any of the offices, and you tell them, I'm going to be meeting, Sally and Jim, when Sally and Jim get to the office, the front desk will greet them by name and offer them a cold beverage or a hot beverage and put them in a conference room. They say that there is no sweeter sound than the sound of your own name. And so take advantage of that. That is, you guys probably don't know this. Maybe if you read our book, we talk about this a little bit, but one of the like driving forces that caused Nate to want to open Remax Professionals was the brokerage we worked for. The front desk lady that worked there was terrible. She had a horrible personality. She had no customer service, and we complained about her, and the broker did nothing. And so that was one of the drives. It's kind of a funny thing, right? That simple little thing of providing good customer service at the front desk was the drive, like the final nail in the coffin that said, you know what, I want to go create my own company so I can control the experience that my client has. All right. And so that's why that's one of those things that is drilled into them. So take advantage of it, right? It's something that makes you look really, really good. Okay. Be in the conference room, not in the car when we're doing this. We want to have a professional setting. We want to build rapport. How do we do that? We have scripts, right? Family, occupation, recreation, dreams. Okay. So we try to find ways to connect with them. They're wearing something or, whatever, right? Try to find a common place that we can start. Weather's a good one. Sports are a good one. So those are all things that are good ways to jump in. So we want to set the win-win. And again, there's a script for this. So talking about it being a collaborative relationship, understanding where they are in the process, and then how do I help them get to the point of buying a home? Okay. So that's message number one. Message number two, which is step number two, is defining their perfect home. Buyers are liars, right? They come in and they only know what they know, especially if they're downsizing. Those can be really tricky transactions because you're going from a 3,000 square foot house to an 1,100 square foot house. There's a lot of emotion that goes into that, right? So uncovering their needs and wants, then helping them prioritize it. There is, and I can't even say custom home because even people who build custom homes have things they wish they would change. So there really isn't a truly perfect home. But if there's something that if they have 10 things that they want, you find a house that has 7 or 8 of those, it's probably as close as you're going to get, right? So we have to give them permission to act, and so helping them identify what are their needs and then prioritizing those. Recent studies with Gen Z says that one of the most important thing was proximity to work, right? Yeah, so proximity to work, then proximity to family and friends, and then safety. So those were the top 3 things that were important to them. And you guys, we've heard people talk about that whole section of the 303, that's all primed for buyers, right? Because those jobs are not primed, but the type of work that they're aiming at, those houses there are within a 30-minute drive. And so all of that area that's going to be developed over the next 10 years, take the plant, for example, the Taiwanese plant, how many people are going to come in on those jobs, right? And those homes are primed perfectly for that location, right? So helping them, then checking the buyer's motivation, and then check their financial ability or again, their financial comfort zone. Okay. Number 3 is gaining the mutual expectation or covering that, and then gaining the roles. So understanding, what do I expect of you, Monica, as my agent, and what can I expect of you as the client, right? And we're going to go over that next week. One of my favorite parts of this class is the roles and expectations. And then we're going to close for the appointment, right? Have them come in. Now is the fun part, right? To go actually show houses. So if they have any homework, don't be taking people out that aren't pre-qualified or don't give you proof of funds. It's one thing if it's a one-time, take them out. Now they're going to go get pre-qualified and it's a matter of solidifying the relationship. It's somebody in your database that you know. You just be really careful with that. And I've heard new agents say, well, I don't have anything better going on. Again, you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And so don't do that. And if they don't want to give you proof of funds, that is a major red flag. And so, be really careful of that. Okay. Because legitimate buyers will provide that. I know a couple of us have had to deal with that WhatsApp app with the scammers going on. So just, trust your intuition, ask a lot of questions. And again, if they don't want to provide those things, then they probably aren't a legitimate client. And then showing homes, right, that meet their criteria, and then close for the buyer to have an informed, intelligent decision. So those are the 5 stages of working with the buyer. And that reduces the risk, right? So if we have a process, again, think about McDonald's, we have a process that we fire off every single time. from the consultation to the criteria sheet to printing out the MLS sheets when you go show, which we're going to talk more about that. Those are all things that reduce the risk when we work with a buyer. Okay. So that is it for today. Any questions, comments, ahas? How many of you are going to go out and dust off your buyer consultation? Right. Thanks, Francine. Y'all need more coffee. I think I need more coffee too. So let's see. Tomorrow we got KV Core with Alex in person at Arrowhead North. Again, I don't know if they're going to change the format of that, but look at your email in case they do. And then Thursday, what do we have Thursday? Oh, the breakfast lunch and learn with Motto and Title Alliance. If you're coming, please RSVP. They're providing breakfast, so we need to know that you're going to be there. Should be a really, I'm actually going to go myself, so should be a really good hour time spent. I love Jody and anything that we can learn new stuff, right? So they're going to talk about the difference between a broker and a bank, and then I can't remember what Jody's talking about, something. But it'll be good, so you should be there. And plus free breakfast, right? So we all like free food. Just make sure you RSVP if you're going to be there. Okay. Any questions or comments? Anything I can help with before we wrap up?
Are you sending out the information from today?
Did you not get it, Scott?
I didn't because I came in late. I've been trying to
Okay.
set up 7 showings this afternoon. So
oh, good for you. 7. You're going to go sell something, right?
that's the whole goal. That's why I work.
That's the plan. Good job. Yeah, you and Jennifer, I owe you the materials, which I'll get to you right now. So
Okay.
and good luck on your showings.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Hopefully the rain doesn't cause you too much heartburn. It's no fun showing houses in the rain.
I don't, you know what, being from Seattle, and this couple actually I met 3 weeks ago at an open house, and they're from Renton, Washington. They're down here for a couple of months. So we'll get along just fine. We'll be like ducks.
Yeah, you guys understand how to navigate the rain, right?
Exactly.
All right, well, good luck. So, okay, you guys, that's all I have for you today. Next week, we'll continue on the conversation. Like I said, this is a 3-part class, so make sure you tune in next week as well.
All right. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. You guys have a great day. Stay safe, and I'll see you hopefully on Thursday.
See you Thursday.
All right, bye-bye.